Hi, I'm Bob Hoglund of Bob Hoglund Incorporated. These interviews were originally created for first-year teachers and administrators, but they evolved into an excellent opportunity for all educators to reflect upon and be inspired by the answers of fellow professionals. I hope you enjoy this excerpt from my interview with Dr. Robert Butz. What advice or pieces of advice would you give somebody who is now going to be a first-year high school principal?
A first year, now...
First of all, let me go back. You've been principal now how many years?
This is my fifth year.
Fifth year, I thought. Okay.
Yep. My advice to a first year principal would be take a lot of notes and don't make any wholesale changes your first year as a principal. And I think that is extremely important because what first year principals a lot of times will do, and I've met a couple, especially this year, that are going into being a principal, and they've asked me the same question, and I've given them the same answer I'm giving you. And one of them I know for sure is not going to do it, but that's on them. But don't make a lot of changes because you're stepping into a culture that you don't know. And I think that the single most important part of being a principal and building the capacity of your teachers as well as the students on the campus is to build that culture. But before you build a culture, you've got to understand it. And you can't understand a culture when you first step into it. It takes a year.
Okay, so you were a student here, you were an athlete here, you were a teacher, assistant principal, everything.
Correct.
And you still were able to take that advice?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, and there were still changes that that I felt that needed to be changed, but I followed after a great principal,
right?
And even after following what he had done and what he had built here, there were still things that did need to be changed.
So how do you put your ego aside and stay in somebody's footsteps for a year?
You have an open communication with your administrative team and tell them to put you in check. And I did that. I talked to my admin team and I said, listen, because I came out of discipline. Now I was in curriculum for a little bit, but I had to tell them that if I spend too much time in student affairs as the principal, you need to kick me out. Because you can get wrapped up in that. If your background is curriculum, you can spend too much time in curriculum and not any within the to do the building itself, the upkeep of the building, or in discipline. Or if you do too much discipline, then everything else falls by the wayside. So I had to tell my administrative team that look, I don't want to make any changes, and if I do, you need to let me know and you need to stop. Because when we sit in this room and we have communication and we talk about things and we lay it all out on the table, we may not agree. However, when we get done with whatever meeting and we go out the door, then we need to be a united front. And you guys need to be able to tell me, that's a bad idea.
What advice would you give a first-year teacher?
To give a first-year teacher, my first year as a teacher, the single most valuable thing that I learned was that you have to be organized. You have to organize your thoughts before you go into a classroom. You have to organize your lesson before you teach it, and you have to be organized from the beginning of the year to the end. And I wasn't my first year. And I had an assistant principal, Miss Bonnie Hill, that sat me down at the end, and she said to me, "You will be an excellent teacher." She said, "But if you don't get organized, you're going to drive yourself crazy." And my response to her was, "I've already driven myself crazy." And she said, "That's something that you need to change." And that's very, very valuable. And that's the first advice that I would give a first-year teacher. The second advice that I would give a first-year teacher is that the first year is the most difficult. And you'll make it, and it'll be okay. However, you've got to understand that you got to get through the first year. Because there are a lot of teachers, and the number of teachers and the percentage of teachers that don't make it past their first year.
Right.
And we can provide all the support for first-year teachers that we want to, and research has shown that that's helpful. But there are still going to be those teachers who just say, it's too much and I can't handle it. However, you talk to a second-year teacher and talk to them about that same thing and say, how was it the second year as compared to the first year? And the majority of them will say it was so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
Because not only did they organize themselves, but they understood what they had to organize.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Let me help you get better results, have healthier relationships, and increased responsibility in your class, school, or district.